The Mokan Empire stretched across the stars, ruling over 1,000 worlds with iron control. Their massive warships, glowing with bright red shields, had never been defeated. For 3,000 years, they had conquered every civilization they met. Admiral Taiho stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars on the main screen. He was tall and thin like all Mokans, with pale blue skin and large black eyes that rarely blinked. Nothing about the mission excited him. It was just another conquest. "Admiral, we have finished mapping the 9th sector," said Commander Do-yun, approaching with perfect posture. Taiho nodded slightly. Mokans didn't smile or frown. Their faces stayed calm all the time. Long ago, they had decided emotions were inefficient and bred them out of their species. "Any threats detected?" Taiho asked, his voice flat and cold. "None worth mentioning, Admiral. The sector contains 14 planetary systems. Only one shows signs of intelligent life." Sumi, the ship's intelligence officer, stepped forward with a data tablet. She was shorter than most Mokans, but equally expressionless. "The species calls themselves humans. They occupy the 3rd planet in a small yellow star system." Taiho studied the information with mild interest. "Technology level." "Primitive," Sumi replied. "They have achieved space travel but have only colonized their moon and sent small outposts to nearby planets. Their weapons use basic projectiles and rudimentary energy beams." "Have they detected our presence?" Taiho asked. "No. Admiral, their detection systems are limited to their immediate solar system." Taiho considered this information. Conquering primitive worlds was hardly worth his attention, but orders were orders. The Mokan Empire expanded constantly, consuming resources from each new world to fuel their endless growth. "Prepare a standard conquest fleet," Taiho ordered. 5 battleships should be sufficient." Commander Do-yun bowed slightly. "That seems excessive for such a primitive world." "Protocol is protocol," Taiho replied. "The High Command requires overwhelming force for all new conquests, regardless of technological level." On the lower decks of the massive ship, soldiers prepared for battle. They checked their armor and weapons with mechanical precision. Not one showed fear or excitement. The Mokans had conquered so many worlds that the process had become routine. Young, Officer Jinky, newly assigned to the fleet, approached his squad leader. "Is it true these humans have never encountered alien life?" "Correct," replied squad leader Kyung. "They believe they are alone in the universe." "Then they will surrender quickly?" "All species surrender eventually," Kyung said. "Some fight longer than others, but the outcome is always the same." Back on the bridge, Taiho studied Earth's image on the main screen. The blue planet looked peaceful, unaware of what approached. He felt no pity for the humans. Emotions were for lesser species. "Deploy." "Probes to gather more data," he ordered. "I want complete analysis of their defensive capabilities and resource deposits." Small disc-shaped crafts shot from the Mokan ships, speeding toward Earth and its neighboring planets. They would map every military base, power station, and population center before the invasion began. One probe flew too close to a human space station. Inside, astronaut David Chen spotted the strange object on his instruments. "Houston, I'm tracking an unidentified object near the station," he reported. "It's not matching any known satellite orbits." On Earth, scientists scrambled to identify the object, but before they could react, the probe cloaked itself and disappeared from their sensors. "Must have been space debris," Mission Control finally concluded. But deep in a secret government facility, a small team of researchers had captured brief readings from the probe before it vanished. "This isn't human technology," whispered Dr. Park, studying the data. "Whatever this is, it's far more advanced than anything we've developed." The governments of Earth continued their usual conflicts and politics, unaware that within days, the entire planet would face an enemy unlike anything in human history. Admiral Taiho set the invasion date. "We attack in 3 planetary rotations," he announced to his officers. "Standard conquest procedures will be followed. First, we disable their communications. Then we destroy their military capabilities. Finally, we establish control centers in major population areas." "And if they resist?" asked Sumi. Taiho's black eyes seemed to grow colder. "Then we follow protocol. Resistance is met with escalating force until submission is achieved." The massive Mokan armada moved silently through space toward Earth, completely confident in their victory. After all, they were invincible. No species had ever defeated them in battle. The humans would soon be just another conquered world. Another footnote in the long history of Mokan domination. What the Mokans didn't understand was that humans were different from any species they had encountered before. Humans were adaptable, creative, and stubbornly refused to accept defeat. The coming battle would not follow the standard protocol. For the first time in 3,000 years, the invincible Mokan Empire would face a challenge they never expected. 2. Mokan ships descended on the human outposts with overwhelming force. The Mars colony had only basic defenses, a few orbital cannons, and a small squadron of fighters. They fought bravely but stood no chance against the advanced Mokan technology. Within 6 hours, the Mars colony surrendered. The Europa Science Station lasted even less time. With minimal military presence, the scientists could only watch as Mokan ships surrounded their dome. They transmitted all their data to Earth before the communication lines were cut. Admiral Taiho observed these victories without emotion. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominance, reviewing battle reports with cold efficiency. Expected, he noted to Commander Do-hyun. Their outposts fell exactly as predicted. Yes, Admiral, Do-hyun replied. The Earth forces are mobilizing now. They appear to be gathering their fleet near their moon. Taiho studied the tactical display showing Earth's defensive ships forming into position. He could see approximately 200 vessels of various sizes, though none approached the scale of even the smallest Mokan warship. Their technology is primitive, he remarked. Combustion engines and basic energy weapons. Hardly worth our attention. Sumi approached with her data tablet. Their communications suggest they are aware of our superiority, Admiral, yet they are still preparing to engage. All species resist initially, Taiho said. It is merely instinct. Before reason takes hold. The Mokan fleet formed its standard battle formation, a crescent shape designed to trap and destroy enemy forces. 5 massive battleships, including the flagship, positioned at strategic points, with dozens of smaller vessels filling the gaps. Their crimson shields glowed against the blackness of space. Open communication channels, ordered Taiho. Offer them standard surrender terms. The message was transmitted to Earth in perfect human language. Your outposts have fallen. Your technology cannot match ours. Surrender now and accept Mokan authority. The response came quickly. This is Admiral Hana Kim of Earth Defense Force. We will not surrender our homeworld. Prepare for battle. Taiho found this response illogical, but unsurprising. Most species required a demonstration of Mokan power before accepting reality. Advance the fleet, he ordered calmly. The Mokan ships moved forward with perfect coordination, their engines leaving trails of blue energy. As they approached Earth's defensive line, Taiho expected the humans to break formation and flee. They did not flee. Instead, the human vessels arranged themselves in an unusual pattern, smaller ships clustering around larger ones in groups of 5 or 6. This formation made no sense to Taiho. Begin standard attack sequence, he commanded. The Mokan ships fired their primary weapons, beams of concentrated energy designed to slice through enemy shields. Several human ships were destroyed immediately, exploding into fragments. But then, something unexpected happened. Admiral, Sumi called out, the human vessels are targeting specific points on our ships. Taiho watched with growing confusion as the humans concentrated their fire on the sensor arrays of his battleships. These were not critical systems. Their loss would not disable a Mokan vessel. Yet the humans were ignoring more vulnerable targets. Their strategy is flawed, he noted. Why waste firepower on non-essential systems? The answer came moments later when several small human fighters suddenly broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the Mokan ships at incredible speed. Intercept. Those vessels, Taiho ordered, but it was too late. One small fighter aimed directly for the Dominance. Its engines flared blindingly bright as it pushed beyond safe operational parameters. The Mokan weapons fired, grazing the small craft but failing to stop its approach. Evasive maneuvers, called Commander Do-hyun, but the massive battleship couldn't move quickly enough. The human vessel slammed into the Dominance's shield and then, to everyone's shock, deliberately detonated its reactor core. The explosion was far larger than should have been possible from such a small ship. For a brief moment, the crimson shield of the flagship flickered and failed. Tai-Ho gripped the command console as the ship shuddered. Warning lights flashed across. "The bridge! What just happened?" he demanded, his voice showing emotion for the first time in centuries. Genuine surprise. Sumi analyzed the data frantically. They overloaded their reactor deliberately, Admiral. The pilot sacrificed themselves intentionally to disable our shields. Impossible, Tai-Ho whispered. No rational being would... Before he could finish, the tactical display showed more human fighters mimicking the same strategy, targeting other Mokan vessels while their shields were focused elsewhere. Though the Mokan fleet ultimately pushed back the humans, destroying over half their ships and forcing the rest to retreat, Admiral Tai-Ho found himself experiencing something unfamiliar. Concern. "Damage report," he ordered as the battle subsided. 3 ships with moderate damage to sensor arrays. Our flagship shields temporarily disabled, but now restored. Most concerning, we have 17 casualties, 17 dead Mokans, in 3,000 years of conquest. The Empire had rarely lost even a single soldier in initial engagements. Admiral Tai-Ho gazed at the blue planet on the main screen. These humans had managed to inflict damage. They had caused Mokan casualties. They had employed tactics no one had predicted. "Study all battle data," he commanded. "I want complete analysis of their fighting methods." For the first time in his long career, Admiral Tai-Ho wondered if perhaps the conquest of Earth might not follow the standard protocol after all. The Mokan invasion forces landed on Earth 3 days after the space battle. Giant transport ships descended through the atmosphere, touching down in strategic locations across the planet. Admiral Tai-Ho had selected major population centers as primary targets: New York, Beijing, London, Mumbai, and 20 other cities. The initial assault moved with ruthless efficiency. Mokan ground troops marched from their ships in perfect formation, their armor glinting in the sunlight. Their weapons easily overpowered Earth's military forces. Tanks and jets were no match for Mokan technology. General Jiho commanded the ground forces attacking Seoul. His troops advanced steadily through the city streets, meeting little effective resistance. By nightfall, they had secured a 10-kilometer perimeter around their landing site. "Progress is satisfactory," Jiho reported to Admiral Tai-Ho. "Human military units are retreating. We will secure the entire city within 24 hours. Similar reports came in from around the globe. The Mokan conquest was proceeding exactly as planned. Or so it seemed. On the second day, things began to change. In Seoul, a Mokan patrol disappeared without warning. Their last transmission mentioned entering an abandoned building. When reinforcements arrived, they found the building empty with no sign of the missing soldiers. "This is irregular," Jiho noted, studying the location on his tactical map. "Send another patrol with advanced sensors." The second patrol suffered the same fate. This time, surveillance drones captured footage of humans using the city's underground tunnels to ambush Mokan forces, then disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Similar incidents occurred in other cities. The humans were adapting to Mokan tactics with surprising speed. They avoided direct confrontation, instead striking quickly, then vanishing into their environment. "They are using the terrain to their advantage," Commander Do-hyun observed during the daily briefing. "Their knowledge of their cities gives them an edge we did not anticipate." Admiral Tai-Ho dismissed these concerns. Minor setbacks, increase patrol strength and deploy heat sensors to locate their hiding places. But the problems continued to multiply. Mokan supply lines came under attack. Communication relays were sabotaged. Human resistance fighters even managed to capture several pieces of Mokan technology. In a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of Seoul National University, scientist Minho examined a damaged piece of Mokan shield technology. For 3 days, he worked without sleep, analyzing its components. "This is remarkable," he told the gathered resistance leaders. "Their shield generators operate on a specific frequency pattern. If we can disrupt that pattern, we could penetrate their defenses," asked Colonel Yunha, leader of the Seoul resistance. "Exactly," Minho nodded. I can modify our weapons to emit a counter-frequency pulse just before impact. It won't disable their shields completely, but it should create a momentary weakness. This discovery spread rapidly through human communication networks. Within days, resistance groups worldwide began modifying their weapons. The information reached military forces that had retreated to defensive positions in mountainous regions. Admiral Taiho noticed the change in battle reports. Mokan casualties were increasing. Several smaller vessels had been damaged when their shields failed unexpectedly. The humans are adapting their weapons, Sumi reported. They appear to have discovered a vulnerability in our shield frequency. Impossible, Taiho stated. No primitive species could analyze our technology so quickly. But the evidence was undeniable. When a major Mokan base in the Rocky Mountains came under attack, human forces penetrated their defenses with modified weapons. For the first time, Mokan soldiers fell back in retreat. General Jiho faced a similar situation in Seoul. Human fighters attacked from multiple directions simultaneously, their weapons now capable of causing real damage. The Mokan perimeter began to shrink. We must withdraw to defensive positions, Jiho reported to Admiral Taiho. Request immediate reinforcements. Taiho stood silently on his flagship, watching the tactical display as Mokan forces retreated across multiple battlefronts. This had never happened before. In 3,000 years of conquest, Mokan forces had never been forced to retreat. How are they adapting so quickly? He asked Sumi. Their society appears highly diverse, she replied after studying the data. They have many different cultures, perspectives, and approaches to problems. This diversity seems to accelerate their problem-solving abilities. Taiho felt something strange within him, a cold sensation in his chest, a tightness in his throat. Emotions long suppressed by Mokan evolution were surfacing. He recognized it from ancient texts. Fear. A just shield. Frequencies, he ordered. Rotate them continuously to prevent human weapons from synchronizing. But even as he gave the order, he wondered if the humans would simply adapt again. For the first time, Admiral Taiho faced the possibility that this conquest might not succeed. The Invincible might be defeated after all. The Mokan High Command received Admiral Taiho's reports with disbelief. After 3,000 years of successful conquests, one primitive planet was causing unprecedented difficulties. The High Command immediately dispatched their most elite forces to Earth under the command of Supreme Commander Hyejin. Supreme Commander Hyejin arrived on the flagship Dominance with an air of absolute authority. She was taller than most Mokans, her blue skin darker, a sign of her pure bloodline. Where Taiho was measured and analytical, Hyejin was decisive and aggressive. Explain this situation, she demanded during her first War Council meeting. The ship's conference room was filled with the highest-ranking Mokan officers, all standing perfectly straight as their supreme leader entered. Admiral Taiho presented the data without emotion, though internally he still struggled with unfamiliar feelings of uncertainty. The humans have displayed unexpected adaptability. They located a weakness in our shield technology within days and shared this knowledge globally. Our ground forces have suffered significant casualties. Sumi displayed holographic images of humans in battle. Biologically, they have no special advantages. Their muscles are significantly weaker than ours. Their senses are limited compared to Mokan capabilities. Their lifespans are barely a century. Then, how are they resisting? Hyejin's voice carried a dangerous edge. Mokans weren't supposed to show emotion, but her frustration was evident. Admiral Taiho hesitated before answering. They adapt, he said quietly. They create solutions we haven't anticipated. Most significantly, they cooperate in ways we don't understand. Explain, Hyejin ordered. Mokans work together through hierarchy and logic. Humans collaborate through emotion and shared purpose. They fight harder when protecting others. They take risks no logical being would consider. They find strength in their diversity rather than uniformity. Supreme Commander Hyejin dismissed these observations with a wave of her hand. Irrelevant psychological analysis. The solution is simple. Increase resource allocation. Overwhelm them with superior numbers and technology. I advise caution, Taiho said. Traditional tactics have proven... Your advice is noted, Admiral. Yijin interrupted coldly. I will lead this conquest personally. Deploy all available forces. We attack in 3 days. While the Mokans prepared their final assault, humans had been busy with plans of their own. Dr. Minho's discovery about Mokan shield technology had been shared beyond Earth. Using captured Mokan communication equipment, resistance leaders established contact with other worlds previously conquered by the Mokan Empire. On planets where Mokan rule had existed for generations, the conquered species listened with growing hope. Some had already begun quiet rebellions, inspired by news of Earth's resistance. The most critical development came from Captain Jiwoo, who led Earth's Space Intelligence Division. She discovered that the Mokan communication network could be infiltrated. More importantly, she found coordinates for their central command carrier. We need to send a small team, she told the Unified Earth Defense Council. If we can infiltrate their command carrier, we could access their main database. Their entire tactical playbook would be ours. The mission was deemed nearly impossible, but 12 volunteers stepped forward. Captain Minho, a former Special Forces soldier, was selected to lead the dangerous operation. Using a captured Mokan shuttle and modified stealth technology, Captain Minho's team approached the Mokan command carrier undetected. They boarded through a maintenance hatch and made their way toward the central database. The team separated to place disruptive devices throughout the ship, but as Captain Minho downloaded critical data from the main computer, alarms sounded. Mokan soldiers converged on his position from all directions. Fighting broke out in the corridors. Of the 12 team members, 9 were killed in the initial firefight. Captain Minho and 2 others fought their way toward the escape shuttle, but were cornered near a secondary command center. Go, Minho ordered his teammates. Get the data back to Earth. As his companions escaped, Minho provided cover fire until he was wounded and captured. Mokan guards brought him to a secure room for interrogation. To his surprise, Admiral Taiho entered alone. Your mission failed, Taiho stated flatly, studying the human with curious eyes. Despite his wounds, Captain Minho sat straight in his restraints. Did it? He asked with a slight smile. Taiho realized the human's companions had escaped with whatever information they had stolen. Why do you continue fighting? He asked. Our forces still outnumber yours significantly. Defeat is mathematically certain. Captain Minho looked directly into the Admiral's black eyes. Because we're human, he said simply. Impossible odds just make us try harder. Taiho was silent for a long moment. You knew you would likely die on this mission. Yes, yet you volunteered. Someone had to. Taiho struggled to process this logic. For what purpose would you sacrifice yourself? For others, Minho replied. For my family, my friends, my planet, for a future where we're free. For the first time, Admiral Taiho began to understand something fundamental about humans. Their strength wasn't in their biology or technology. It was in their connections to each other, their willingness to sacrifice for what they believed in. The very emotions the Mokans had evolved away from had somehow made humans stronger, not weaker. As he left the interrogation room, Taiho knew that Supreme Commander Hyejin's strategy would fail. More force wouldn't work against a species that grew stronger when pushed to the edge. The invincible Mokan Empire had finally met its match. The largest Mokan fleet ever assembled entered Earth's solar system. Over 200 massive battleships formed a wall of crimson shields that stretched across space. Supreme Commander Hyejin stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching as Earth grew larger on the view screen. All ships report ready for final assault, announced her second-in-command. Begin the attack sequence, Hyejin ordered. No mercy, no prisoners. The humans will learn the cost of defiance. The enormous fleet moved forward in perfect formation. On Earth, defense forces prepared for what many believed would be their final stand. Despite their courage and ingenuity, they faced overwhelming numbers, but then something unexpected happened. Commander, we're receiving a transmission, said a communications officer. It's coming from the Dominance. Hyejin frowned. Admiral Taiho's ship put it through. Instead of appearing on the Mokan command channel, Taiho's message broadcast on all frequencies, reaching every ship in the fleet and Earth's Defense Command simultaneously. Attention Earth Command, Taiho's voice rang clear. I bring tactical information on Mokan weaknesses and battle strategies. The invasion can be stopped. Hyejin's face showed shock, a rare emotion for a Mokan. Cut that transmission. Arrest Admiral Taiho immediately. But it was too late. Taiho had already begun transmitting detailed files on Mokan shield frequencies, weapon systems, and tactical formations. Information that would give Earth's forces the edge they desperately needed. In his quarters aboard the Dominance, Taiho stood calmly as security officers burst through the door. He offered no resistance as they arrested him. The decision he had made went against everything Mokans believed, yet somehow felt right. His time studying humans had changed him. On Earth, military leaders rushed to implement Taiho's information. But they weren't fighting alone anymore. Ships began appearing at the edges of the solar system, vessels from worlds previously conquered by the Mokans. Word of Earth's resistance had spread, inspiring others to join the fight. Captain Minho, who had been rescued during a prisoner transfer, worked alongside Sumi in the Joint Command Center. The Mokan intelligence officer had also defected, convinced by Taiho's arguments. "We've never faced a force like this," Sumi told Minho as they coordinated the diverse fleet. "Not because you're stronger or smarter individually, but because you bring together different perspectives." Minho nodded. "Each species sees solutions others miss. Together we're stronger than any one of us could be alone." The battle began. Mokan ships fired their main weapons, expecting quick victory. Instead, they found their targets protected by modified shields based on their own technology. The coalition ships used Taiho's information to target specific weaknesses in Mokan defenses. For 3 days, the battle raged across the solar system. Though outnumbered and outgunned, the coalition forces systematically exploited every Mokan weakness. Ships from Earth fought alongside vessels from a dozen formerly conquered worlds, each contributing unique tactics. On the second day, Admiral Taiho escaped his cell with help from loyal officers who had come to share his views. He took command of a small group of Mokan ships whose crews had decided to join the coalition. Supreme Commander Hyejin watched in growing rage as her Invincible fleet suffered defeat after defeat. Her ship became the primary target of the coalition forces. When its shields finally fell, she gave her final order: self-destruct sequence. Take as many of them with us as possible. But her crew refused the order. Throughout the fleet, Mokan soldiers were questioning the war they had fought for millennia. The Supreme Commander's flagship was boarded by coalition forces, and Hyejin was captured. When the last loyal Mokan ships retreated from Earth's solar system, cheers erupted across the coalition fleet. The impossible had happened. The Invincible had been defeated. Across the galaxy, conquered worlds declared independence, inspired by Earth's example. The Mokan Empire, which had stood for 3,000 years, collapsed in a matter of weeks. 1 month after the battle, Admiral Taiho stood with human leaders and representatives from formerly conquered worlds as they drafted a peace treaty. The Grand Hall was filled with beings of all shapes and sizes, a diversity that would have once disgusted him, but now filled him with hope. "Why did you help us?" President Jiyon asked him quietly during a break in the proceedings. Taiho considered the question carefully. "I observed something in humans that changed my understanding. We Mokans believed invincibility meant never falling, never knowing defeat. We engineered that belief into our biology, removing emotions we saw as weaknesses." "And now?" she asked. "Humans taught me that true invincibility means always rising again, no matter how many times you fall. Your emotions, your connections to each other, give you strength we never understood." Captain Minho, now a general, joined their conversation. "That's humanity's real strength," he said. "Not that we're unbeatable, but that we never stop trying." Taiho nodded slowly. "Perhaps my people can learn this lesson too. Not to return to conquest, but to find strength in connections rather than isolation." As the new alliance took its first steps toward peace, ships from Earth ventured further into the galaxy than ever before. They came not as conquerors, but as explorers and friends carrying the lesson they had taught the Mokans. True invincibility comes not from overwhelming power, but from the courage to rise after falling, to adapt, to grow, and to stand together.